So I'm very happy to have with us today my two colleagues. First, Gemma, I pronounce your name Gemma, but is that okay in English? How do you pronounce your name in your native language? Is Gemma okay? Your sound's off. I can't hear you.
I can confirm if you want.
I mute myself. So don't worry. My name is Gemma, but I have living in Madrid for many years, and people use my name as many ways that they want. So please feel free to use my name.
Okay. Do you what are the other versions do you get? Do you get Gemma or
Gemma, Gemma?
Oh, nice. Gemma. Okay. Okay, good. So I didn't mess that one up. Gemma is the head of migration and mobility policies at In Strategies, which is a think and do firm, pretty sure based in Barcelona. But she's also an associate research at Great Team, which is a very important research team at Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona. She's one of the experts for the Intercultural Cities program. We're going to talk about that. And she's a policy advisor for the Spanish network of intercultural cities, which is called RECI. We're going to hear about that network also. She's been involved in a number of important kind of Europe-based or pan-Europe research projects. She also served as the head of the cabinet of the Spanish Secretariat of Immigration in the beginning of the 2010s, and as immigration and head of the research program on international migration at CIDOB, which is another interesting research center based in Spain. She was involved in several European projects, such as the MIPEX Migrant Integration Policy Index, which is a really important tool for researchers working on integration. She's a graduate of the Autonomous University of Barcelona with a degree in political and public administration sciences. And she holds also a master's degree in international relations and a master's degree in political analysis. Some of us have 10,000 degrees, right? Very proud that Gemma's with us. And Gemma works closely with Danny, whose full name is Danielle, I guess, but we just know him as Danny. Danny has been working in this field for more than 15 years. He does a lot of work on the promotion of innovation and strategies with regards to the promotion of diversity, especially in cities. So working on helping city administrations become more inclusive and more intercultural. From 2007 to 2011, this is when I met Danny for the first time. He was the commissioner for immigration and intercultural dialogue in the city of Barcelona. During this period, he worked on two large projects. One was the very well-known and very substantive Barcelona intercultural plan. Anthony, if you can't find that link, I can send it to you, but it's a really important document. I can't remember if we put it on Studium already, but it's one of the first and still one of the best intercultural plans that was designed for a large city. And it's been a model for other cities. The other project that Danny worked on was a project that we're going to hear about called the anti-rumors strategy, which is a kind of an innovative methodology that organizations and cities use to fight against all kinds of rumors and prejudice and more fake news about diversity. From these experiences, Danny founded an organization that's called I'm a City, or IMA City, which is an organization focusing on cities, the development of cities. And he was the first person to become the coordinator of this Spanish network of intercultural cities. We're going to talk some about intercultural cities and about the networks of cities. The Spanish network of intercultural cities is a very important one. It's one of the most dynamic, and I think it's one of the first networks of intercultural cities affiliated with the Council of Europe. So the Council of Europe, you're going to hear quite a bit about today. The Council of Europe is an organization that is supposed to be neutral, but that has done a lot of promotion in terms of the promotion of human rights And since 2008, they put together this very innovative program, which has to do with how to help cities become more intercultural in terms of their policies and their projects. And so both Gemma and Danny have been very closely involved in this work at the Council of Europe at what's referred to as ICC, or Intercultural Cities. Anthony, maybe we can send a link to ICC also, the Intercultural Cities Network. And so Gemma and Danny are both experts, consultants for this program. I've had the pleasure of having Gemma and Danny in Montreal in the past. Danny and I have worked on a project called the Anti-Rumors Project with the City of Montreal. And there are plans to bring them back. I try to get them to come here every year because we have things to work on, and there's beer to be consumed also. But the problem is now we have a pandemic, so I decided to invite them to do this online. So I'm very happy you guys are with us. I probably could say more, but I won't. If you turn on your microphones, the floor is yours.
Okay, bonjour à tout le monde, and merci beaucoup pour l'invitation. And this is the only thing that I'm going to say in French in order to avoid to destroy the language. I prefer to destroy English language. It's better. So I'm sorry for that. We are going to split the session in two parts, and as Bob said, we are going to restrict ourselves because normally we want to get people involved in our sessions in a more dynamic way. The only thing that I'm going to ask you, and it is not for now, it's going to be for sure in the second part of the session, is that please show your faces. Because for us, it's really important to see and meet people. One of the things we always talking when we talk about interaction is also see people. We are losing this kind of moments, the micro moments that we see, but if you don't mind, please help us on that. So I'm going to share my screen if I can, because we have had some kind of problems. And I'm going to explain, as I say, we split this session into parts. My part is the boring one. Danny is going to do the most amazing one. But I think it's important to explain what we are going to talk in order to put some ideas in the table. We know that you have been working in this summer course in interculturality, and so we are not going to discover anything to you, but I think it's important for us at least try to explain which is the framework in which we work with the cities, and because part of our job is trying to help cities to build intercultural policies. So in order to do that, we need to understand what we are talking about. It seems simple, but it's not so easy. There is an intense and a bit crazy sometimes academic discussion about what interculturalism means, which are the limits, which are the concepts. So we need to focus in a very practical approach in order to avoid this kind of academic discussions that are very interesting in the academic scenario, but they are not very useful in the public policies and public actions. So this is the idea that we are going to try to focus today. This is the idea that how we can move the intercultural approach from the theoretical framework to the practical one. And we are for sure focusing cities, because one of the things that we always understand when we talk about interculturalism is differently from the assimilationism or multiculturalism as a more traditional approaches to manage diversity. Interculturalism is a bottom-up approach. The other ones, as we understand, are more top-down, meaning the state creates a narrative, creates an idea, and then they are moving to the citizenry in order to fit in this discussion. Differently, interculturalism
sont actuellement activés.
Sorry? I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm saying that interculturalism, from our point of view, is a very bottom-up project in which all citizens should understand and participate, and then we are creating this kind of project that move. So we are moving from assimilationism to interculturalism, taking ideas from both of the traditional models. So we understand that the assimilationism model, it's based in in human rights, in terms of civil and social rights, and in terms of individuality and freedom for people, and all these complex elements that are based in the idea. And I think that this is one of the things that we keep from assimilationism. From the multiculturalism approach, we pick the idea of diversity and the recognition and acknowledgement of diversities and different diversities from different points of view, starting from cultural, but then, as I'm going to explain, we move from cultural expressions to other ideas of identities. And this is also a thing that we kept from the multiculturalism approach. And then we define the interculturalism approach with this one that it's also focused on the idea of community building and social cohesion. What I'm trying to say with that we are trying to create a model that is based in three main principles, that are the principles that we are working with in the framework of the RECI, the Spanish network that in this moment is about 21, I add three more, 21 cities from all over Spain. And the idea that we are trying to do is how we can put these principles in the local action. So which are the principles? First of all is equality, but we also talk about equity because we are talking about equality of rights, duties, but also opportunities. If we miss this idea of have the same opportunities, we are missing a very, very important part of the photo of what public policies should and can do in order to guarantee equality among citizens. The second one is the diversity in terms of recognition and respect of diversity, and also this kind of visibilization of the diversity. We always say that we need to show and improve and try to get local authorities not only to recognize that there is diversities, but also to show that in a way that it's not folkloric, in a way that it's absolutely in terms of equal recognition of differences between peoples, in order to feel free and get comfortable in being in a city in which are people that are from different backgrounds or different realities. And the third pillar that I think it's the most interesting in terms of public approach is how we promote positive interaction in order to facilitate and promote contacts and try to destroy this kind of prejudices, stereotypes that sometimes appears because fears and whatever. This is a process. We always say this is not an ideal model. This is a process of building public policies. So why I'm saying that? Because as Bob said, we are trying to adapt and readjust absolutely the intercultural approach to the reality. So now we need to deal with the idea of how we promote positive interaction in a pandemic era, how we meet people and how we put people together if the restrictions from movement and also from kind of small things that we are now need to understand that we cannot put 2,000 persons in a meeting place today because it's not forbidden. So how we can and how we need to transform this principle to the new reality is also part of the process of what interculturality means, meaning we need to adjust to the reality because it's a part of what we want to do. So why we want to do that, and I think that I'm going to put that and get Danny to continue. The idea is that we need to get that because we really believe that interculturalism is a good policy response to some of the challenges that we understand are now posing a risk to our societies. And when we talk about societies, we are talking about democratic societies in which social cohesion and the respect of diversity, equality, and interaction are main core goals of what we want to do. One of the risks is the risk of homogenization, the idea that people need to fit in an ideal citizenship model in which it's not always easy to understand. This is one of the risks, and trying to acknowledge diversity and emphasize the importance of diversity tries to avoid this risk. The other risk for sure is discrimination. This is a core business of the intercultural approach. Equality, fight against discrimination, fight against racism, fight against every one of phobias that you can imagine, because this is an element that it's crucial, that it's key, and it's absolutely basic to guarantee equality among citizens. And then the other one is fragmentation, because this is also one of the risks that we see when we put a lot of emphasis in differences, that we forget the idea that we are all together in the same society. So one of the risks, and it has been happening, and it's interesting because we are coming from countries with different traditions in terms of managing diversity, but it's interesting how each country or how each city deals with that. Sometimes putting so many emphasis on the differences gets you to forget the general picture. So one of the ideas of the intercultural approach is try to provide this idea that we are all together, that we are all the same citizens with the same rights, with the same recognition, with the same opportunities, but we need to understand these common goals, these common objectives that are beyond the things that are different from one of each other. So this is the theoretical framework in which we are moving. This is following the ICC, the Intercultural Cities project, and for sure is what we are trying to do with our cities here in Spain. And I'm going to give the floor to Danny to explain how we are doing that, Danny.
How? That's what I like to know. Hi, everybody. It's really cool to feel close to Montreal again, even if from the social distance and whatever. But I'm really happy that you, Bob, and the group invite us to be part of these sessions. And I, as Gemma said, this session today we're going to stay here 2 hours. Usually we have this master class in the Pompeu Fabra. It's 10 hours, but I think what it's more interesting for the students in our class is that they have to put themselves the intercultural lens as if they were local authorities in cities. So from now on, I'm going to ask you to consider yourself that you are like officials in the municipality, in the local government of your city, and that you're in charge of the diversity policies. Please try to become this person, okay? Because what we want to do now with this hour and this time we have is that you feel the energy and the complexities that it means to really implement, design, implement, and evaluate intercultural policies. Bob said that, yeah, when I was commissioner for immigration in Barcelona 10 years ago, we designed this intercultural strategy. And I have to say that right now, Bob, they contract us from the outside to update, to review the plan. So tomorrow we have a meeting with them, and it's very exciting because after 10 years, the plan is still there. And it's really a challenge to put ourselves the hat of the city again and see what happened in these 10 years and what are the challenges right now. It's something, many things have changed. There are some substantial elements that are the same one, but we need to adapt to the new context. So for us, it's really cool because we are doing this now, and we're gonna ask you, the students, your help on doing this job, okay? So the first thing, we've been involved for many years working with cities on how to move from theory to practice. And one thing that we realized on these years is that the 3 principles that Gemma explained before are actually a very useful approach to move from theory to practice. Apparently, they seem quite theoretical, you know, equality, recognition of diversity, interaction. But then you go into the cities and to the municipalities, and you start looking at the reality of the city from this lens, from the lens of equality, of recognition of diversity and interaction. And it happens to be a very useful approach to really inspire policies from very different areas of the city. Before we start with the very practical approach examples, and we will ask you to do some work on this, First, let me share some key elements that usually in all the cities have demonstrated to be crucial in order to move from this theory to practice in a quite successful way. Okay, so the first thing that when we arrive in a city and we work, it's to see if there is a real commitment, if it is real commitment on leadership and from the political dimension, if politicians really believe on this or not, because this is going to make a big change. I mean, of course, civil society can and is doing amazing things, but we are talking about public policies. So for public policies on diversity and interculturalism can be really something useful to make a change. We need political commitment and also consensus. In Barcelona, I remember one of the best things we did was to spend 1 year talking, debating, reaching consensus with all the political parties in the city, to be sure that once we had like an approach that was shared, that was common for many different sensibilities and political parties. So in order to keep some sustainability in the future, and there's been 3 changes of government since then, and all the new governments have kept the approach. And I think when we talk about public policies, sustainability, it's very, very important. There is also the need to have a common narrative. What do we understand by interculturalism? And if we, I've seen many cities failing with this. You start doing things, you have apparently a common idea, but then when you ask, I usually do this exercise in many cities, I ask a politician and I ask the directors of different areas, technicians, people on the front line, offices, and I ask them, what's interculturality for you, interculturalism? And I've got as many different answers as possible, you know. So that means that if you don't share a common approach, it's very complicated that all the policies will be coherent, they have a really capacity to make real change. So the narrative, it doesn't need to be just the academic part. It has to be, you know, a way to communicate with many different actors. And you need to have these common conceptual frameworks, because otherwise it doesn't really work. Again, this mainstream, interculturalism, equality, recognition of diversity and interaction is not an issue from one department. This is not something from the area of diversity in the city. This is not just a topic for maybe education, social areas. No. I mean, if we think about what really influences the equality of rights, the real rights, the real equality of rights in a city, if we think about the opportunities that the city offers to all residents in terms of interaction, we realize that urbanism is a crucial dimension of how people interact. We realize that cultural policies are crucial in terms of all the 3 principles: education, of course, sports, economy, employment. So the thing here is interculturalism, it has to be a global approach, and all the areas of the municipality have a really important role to play here. Again, participation. This is not something that can be done just from some officials and politicians or local technicians in the offices or just designing policies. If there is no some common consensus with some key players and people from the civil society working together, building networks, being on the same track, then there is no real change, deep change, long-term change. It's going to be just a more kind of top-down or kind of, you know, partial kind of actions. So making these links with civil society but again, not just the usual suspects, not just some NGOs working on the field on this. No, we need to get on board people from the education, from the cultural, from the sports, from the economy, from all different areas. Of course, you need the resources, but this is, I don't want to get into here too much, but if you really mainstream the approach, it's not about resources, it's a change of mind. It's putting your intercultural lens and saying, okay, from cultural department, now I realize that I need to take into account how diversity influences the equality of people to get equal access to culture. How do we recognize diversity, the richness of diversity from a cultural point of view? And how from the cultural department and policies, we really include the principle of interaction in our policies. So this is important, but the resources is not just are the resources of each department that have to adapt to these principles. Okay, when we want to move from theory to action, usually one of the best tools and ways to do that is to design a long-term strategy, global strategy for the city, the one like the one we designed in Barcelona. But it's not the only one. There are many different ways, but of course, this is a very interesting one, because even the process itself to design this strategy, it means a great opportunity for the mainstreaming to get in touch with civil society, to share the diagnosis. What are the main challenges in the city right now? What are the focus that we should, you know, take into account to deal with this? And so designing this in long-term strategy, it's very important, but sometimes at political level, because different contexts, it's not possible. We talk about this later. And then, of course, monitoring, evaluation. How do we evaluate the impact of intercultural policies? This is a topic for thousands of theses, but it's a very interesting and challenging one. Today we cannot get into deeper on this, but anyway. And there is this also thing about the intercultural competences. One of the first things we need to focus on is that if you want to design intercultural policies that are successful, you need to get some intercultural competences. Both individually and as an organization. If you don't have some intercultural mind, it's very complicated that you are successful on designing intercultural policies. So this is something that it's important. We are working now on ICC, on a RETI level, on identifying the specific intercultural competences that politicians and local officers in cities should get in order to design proper and effective intercultural policies. I'm not gonna get more on the PowerPoint. I don't know if we just leave it here now, and I'm just gonna get into the concrete practice. Okay, let's put some examples of how. Imagine that you, as I said before, you are in charge of the intercultural policies area of your city, whatever is Montreal or whatever. Think about your own city. And think, how can you really take into account the three principles of equality, recognition of diversity, and interaction, and apply them into real practice, real policies? Think about urbanism, as we were saying before. We know that, for example, we can, from our intuition, that urban segregation, it's not very good in terms of, you know, interaction, for example. You know, if you have some neighbors in which there is a high concentration of people from same backgrounds, wherever, you are, you know, reducing the opportunity for interaction. But it's not just about interaction, it's also about equality. We know how discriminatory processes also are affected by the urban segregation. Think about what you could do to try to promote equality and interaction from the urbanism. There are many examples in many cities. One of the main mistakes that many cities did in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and still some cities are doing is, for example, to locate social housing in all of them in some specific areas. Well, that's not very clever in terms of trying to promote interaction and avoid segregation, right? But it's not just social housing, because of course, at the end, we are talking about social and economic issues here. This is not just about, you know, origin, cultures, ethnicity. There's a big mix here. And also there is the quality of the public space. We've done some studies in some cities. I remember in France and some called banlieue, and we were there and they say, how can we promote interaction here? And you were walking about on those neighborhoods and say, well, there's nobody in the street. There is no one shop, there is no one bar, there is no library, there is nothing here. I mean, the first thing you should do is that this basement and the first floors should be open to new services, cultural, sports, leisure. And I remember they say, well, but this is very complicated because you need to change the law. You need to buy maybe these buildings or these floors and change the law. This is very complicated. Better we do some diversity parties and make people around. No, my friend, no. The interculturalism is not about just bringing people all around and having fun together. It's how do you change the environment so the equality, recognition, diversity, and interaction takes place in a more natural and spontaneous way? How do you reduce the barriers for those principles? So at some point, some cities realize that changing urban laws are probably one of the most effective tools to promote interculturalism. And this is not very easy to get. And some people still are with the old kind of fashion discourse of linking interculturalism with popular parties or workshops or people in the park. But again, parks really important. I remember in the Netherlands, also again, they asked, what can we do to make people around? And there was this park, and there was nothing in there, and no place for kids, no common areas to do anything, sports, whatever. And at the end, it's like designing in a different way a public space can make such a big difference. Okay, so this is just some examples of how from the urban departments of the cities that are really tough sometimes to convince and to seduce them that they are crucial players on this topic. Because usually people say, okay, go to the social areas, go to the education if you have any competences, because we don't have, but what I have to do with interculturalism? And again, it happens with another department, economy and development of the city. Still people think sometimes on these issues on other, these poor migrants or people from minorities who need to be trained, assist, support, whatever, but they don't see the picture. I mean, diversity, if it's well, in a well environment, and if you promote the three principles of equality of opportunities and rights, recognize diversity like something intrinsic of your city, of your identity, and people can interact and mix. There are a lot of opportunities here, a lot of opportunities in many areas. And people from the economy development, many times they still lack this vision of saying, oh yeah, well, maybe we have also a lot of new entrepreneurs here in the city. We have people filling some commerce and shops and whatever that we didn't feel before. There are connections, global connections, a lot of languages, people with different skills. So this idea of diversity is an opportunity for development. It's also lacking many times, right? There's also, in terms of culture, Montreal is a city that it's probably, it's been promoting interculturalism. It's one of the, I would say, one of the most cities in the world that have promoted more interculture through culture. When you are in Montreal, culture is all around the place, in many corners, in many places, and there are many different ways. I remember in Barcelona, when it's not just culture in terms of popular and festivities, it's the museums. How the museums of the cities, which are key players to build an identity, they include the diversity of the city in their narratives, in the way they see the reality. I remember with the Museum of History of the city of Barcelona, in which the contribution of not just migrants, but the reality and how this reality has been changing was not really an issue inside the museum. So just changing the mentality and the subjects and the approach that you get from museums can make a really big change on how people feel that as a society, you are recognizing this diversity, and you're building common identities, more inclusive identities in which many people feel really belong. But also public libraries, in Montreal, how places like so important at the neighborhood level, like public libraries, can adapt or not to the reality of the city. And I think in Barcelona, for example, one of the crucial equipments and services have been public libraries adapting themselves to the reality of the neighborhoods. But in many other cities, they haven't. they haven't. Of course, you have also popular culture, and you have festivals, jazz festival in Montreal. So all this kind of cultural approach, when they are thought from the principles, are we assuring the equality of all artists in the city to get the opportunities to become important actors in the city? Are we understanding that there are different publics in the city, so the offer have to be adapted to all this diversity? So many people still haven't done this, and or they do it from a very multiculturalist approach. I remember in Barcelona, oh, there is the theater, blah blah. We identify that a lot of people from Morocco, they don't come to the theater. Well, let's bring a Moroccan theater, and let's invite all the Moroccans of the city, and then we give them free tickets, and we fill in the whole theater with Moroccans. Yeah, come on, this is not the thing. I mean, people have to feel that the cultural offer of the city, it's appealing to them. So then there is this mixing, right? And this equality has at the end, it has to be more related to a change of mentalities than real on resources or in any structural issues. I just want to mention also an example: sports. I remember city, you say, oh, now in Barcelona there are some people from Pakistan and Bangladesh playing this cricket in the squares, and they are throwing balls to the old people, and they are just killing them, with the ball. And they felt that these guys playing cricket in the public space was something wrong, was something that, okay. And some of them from the sports department say, don't worry, in 2 years they are playing football, we have Barca, we have Messi, they will forget about this. Huh? So you can ask them the three levels. Is like, okay, how is this diversity influencing the equality of these Barcelona citizens to play the sports they like? Are you adapting your facilities so they can play what they want? Oh, well, we need to draw new lines in the place, and it's very complicated, and okay. So you're not recognizing diversity as an asset, as an opportunity for the city. You're thinking diversity is something that, okay, fuck, these guys are just demanding new stupid things. The second one, it was like, okay, recognition of diversity and interaction. Are you saying, oh yes, we arrange a cricket place for these people in the mountain on the surroundings? But come on, this is not just about people from Pakistan playing cricket there. Why don't you show cricket to everybody, at least to the local municipal sports facilities, that still there is a demonstration, there is some people, maybe there are more people interested, not just keeping on the football or on the basketball. We have an opportunity here, there more choices to play. And suddenly there were some girls start playing cricket, and they start mixing, and they become the first girls cricket team in Barcelona, playing the leagues with other places. And it was mixed. And I think these kind of things are very kind of intercultural success, because you promote equality for people to play the sport they want. You recognize this diversity as something valuable, something good for the city, and you're promoting mixing, you're promoting interaction on people, right? So anyway, I'm saying this just to put some examples of how important is to have this global approach to interculturalism. And the three principles are important to don't forget that first we are talking about equality. And this is very important, because if there is no strong commitment against discrimination, that the intercultural relations are very complicated to happen. They can take place, but in a very unequal situation. So I've been in many cities that say, yeah, we're promoting this and this. What about your education system? Is it segregating people from different backgrounds in terms of, well, yeah, actually all migrants and people from it are in the public sector on some neighborhoods, but they're doing okay, you know, more or less, you know, they're doing okay. Well, this is not, you know, about, in terms of, think about equality, and think about, we want to give opportunity to build a common sense of belonging here, a more inclusive sense of belonging. If you have schools with 90% of people from specific backgrounds, how the hell are you going to build this sense of belonging? And we know that with the data, you know how many of these people move into university compared to others, blah, blah, blah. This is interculturalism. We cannot forget this equality dimension. And from the education, many cities say, we don't have competences. But actually, education is something so big, so it has so many different areas of action, that there are cities that are doing a lot of things for education without having real competences. There is a lot of work to do on education. So it's not just like how you can train teachers, how you can work with families, how you can work with urbanists to make some schools better than they are. How can you work with the extracurriculum work? There are a lot of things that cities can do. So today, what we will ask you to do is that you spend some time. We're going to give you like 5 minutes plus the break. So you can have the 20 minutes break as long as you spend at least 5 minutes, I would say 7, to think a little bit. Imagine that you are in charge of this, and from your city, you're a part of the local government. And I would say, think about the challenges that your city, you feel that your city has in terms of equality, recognition of diversity, and interaction regarding diversity. And just choose one topic, one area. You know, it can be anything. And then think about something that you could do in order, whatever, to promote equality, to promote recognition of diversity, or to promote interaction. Usually we do this with more time, so we build some groups and they have to design a policy with everything, the diagnosis, identifying weaknesses and the strength of a city, identifying the weakness and say, hey, this city is doing nothing in terms of cultural policies and intercultural. So let's try to think what they could do here. And you spend some time thinking on these diagnoses, goals, short-term and long-term goals. This is, as Gemma said, a long process, full of complexities. And I would say that flexibility is also a very important issue here. You need to be open-minded and flexible, because reality is complex and you cannot go with a kind of closed receipt. This is the interculturalist thing. If we do this and this and this, it's going to be okay. No, reality is always much more complex than this. So you need to move around. You need to get allies here. So, but think about your city and choose one area, one topic, and just think about, okay, I think in my city, maybe there is no enough interaction among people from different backgrounds, or at least in some areas. What we could do, if not to force interaction. Many people say, oh, but why I need to be obliged to interact? I don't want to interact. It is not about making interaction a compulsory attitude. This is about breaking down the barriers that don't allow for people to interact in a much more natural way. I was in one public library in El Raval like 15 years ago. This neighborhood in the center of the city, it has like 50% of people born in a foreign country. You went to the public library and they were only white locals, you know, doing some stuff. The people realize we are a public service here. We cannot be found with public funds and offering only services to half of the neighborhood. So we have to change. They change, definitely they change. They start including content from many different backgrounds. They start doing activities for kids. They start bringing people from different cultures to tell tales, story tales to the kids. They start doing debates, etc. After a few years, I went to the same public library and it was amazing. It was full of people. It was a really good idea. What was that neighborhood? So that means equality, because now these people have equal access to a very important and relevant service for their life. It's recognition of diversity, because you are saying, hey, we have books also in Chinese, in different languages. We organize this. We put diversity as something which is valuable, which is good. And finally, a lot of interaction everywhere, mixing. And all those kids that were saying, oh no, you know, these are from Pakistan. I say, no, this is Mohammed, my friend. He's from Barcelona. It's a very cool guy. So there are so many different ways to promote these principles. We're just asking you to focus in one thing, okay? Just say, okay, in my city, maybe I think, you know, on the sports thing, it could be good to do something like this. Or there's a segregation in this area. Probably if we do something on this area, maybe we would increase, you know, the diversity, social and cultural. Choose just one topic and just one single idea. We don't have time to big debates here, but I think it's very important that you put yourself the hat of a local authority in charge of intercultural policies. Choose one topic about the challenge that you think your city has, and just share it. So after the break, what we would do is that each of you, we probably won't have time for everybody, but I think it would be very interesting that you share your idea, or saying, well, I think my city, you know, there's this, and maybe to promote more equality or to promote more interaction, we could do something about this. And then we provide the feedback, okay? Maybe there are experiences that are connected to this idea. Maybe there are other examples. Maybe there is, you know, an idea that can be linked to this. It's going to be brief. It's going to be kind of a speed dating thing, okay? It's not going to be like, hello, my name is Francois.
No, this is social distancing. We can't be playing around with speed dating right now, please.
I'm trying to get close to you, my friend.
I told you guys he was going to do this. I told you he was going to do this. I knew it. It's just a matter of time. Danny, before we go to the break, can I ask a couple of questions just to focus everyone's attention? First, I wonder if you can put the slide of the three principles. This is really like our favorite topic for Danny and Gemma and I to talk about, the intercultural principles and how do you balance them, and we've been using Danny, about the model that we use in Montreal. It's very similar with the three, avec les 3D. And we use this model in the class. First, I want to ask you, I notice that when we do activities like this with our students, a lot of times their first reaction is to either think of something that has to do with the diversity paradigm. So they think, well, oh, we'll organize like a big, you know, neighborhood festival, or we'll organize like a week of meetings, you know, to get everybody fired up about diversity. Or sometimes they'll say, well, we want to like do something like do an awareness raising campaign where we're going to fight against prejudice or against discrimination. And so they'll think about something that's more focused on like the equality or the anti-discrimination approach. It's more difficult to think of ideas that are focused on positive interactions. I don't know why, but we find that a lot, that people tend to go more quickly to diversity or to equality than they do to interactions. I just want to bring that up with the students for the students to think about the kind of ideas that they're going to come up with, that it's nice to have a balance. But I mean, you don't want, so the question I have for you is, should the students think of an activity that covers all three? Or should they think of an activity that focuses more, a project or a policy that focuses more on one of the three? Or two? Yeah,
that's a very good question. No, not the three, because that's complex in few minutes to be able to do that. But I totally agree with you. I mean, I would say focus please on interaction more than anything, because honestly, luckily, even if the levels of equality are not really good, almost, well, I wouldn't say anywhere, there are big differences among countries, societies, communities. But there are more people worried about the equality thing, you know.
There's a legal system that's supposed to be, that's supposed to protect people's rights and fight against
discrimination. About raising awareness as well, and how to deal with this. That in terms of, at the end, this is about the evolution of the models, like recognition of diversity. We have all this multicultural also, historical kind of inspiration in which some of the recognition of rights of people, the culture, the blah, blah, a bit like, labeling, whatever. The tricky thing here is interaction. And I mean, I'm not saying the equality is not tricky. It's really tricky, but we are less people focusing on interaction, comparative, That's why it's really important to invest some energies on this, because at the end, what I realized, anywhere in the world, at the end, one of the crucial elements of social cohesion, of building shared identities or whatever, is interaction. And I think we're moving towards this more and more and more. I think the evolution of our times, if we think about polarization, which is a very huge topic right now, because people still think about society, oh, there is an ambivalent majority in the middle. Well, there are a lot of polarization now. People are really ideologically, some of them really, in getting really emotional, on this. And it's tricky sometimes to get more interaction. And for whatever the topic, I'm not talking about diversity, well, it's all kind of diversities, And so it's really important to promote this interaction. And we see on the areas in which there is more interaction, there are less need to work somehow. If the interaction, it's also in a more equal way, with some recognition. It's not alone. Interaction alone can be a big mess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, interaction can be a part of the problem too. More mixing can also lead to more problems. Exactly. And also, you said before in your presentation that mixing is not so effective when it's something that's imposed from the top down. Gemma was talking about that the mixing that really has an impact on people's perceptions is mixing that's kind of more organic or more natural, or what they refer to as meaningful. So Gemma, before we go to the break, I wanted to ask you a question also. You've done a lot of work on public policy and public administration. Do you think the students should they should be thinking more about laws and policies, like frameworks? Or do you think they should be thinking more about specific projects and like programs? And how do you want them to focus their energy?
I think that I'm mute or no, sorry.
You're fine. Yeah, we hear you.
No, I think that for this session, because this is a very short session and we are going to spend a very short time thinking about, I think it's better that they think in a very specific actions. Because trying to change everything, but it's basic to arrive to the final solution, it's more complicated, and maybe we can lose this kind of innovative idea that we want to share today. So I think that today we can see a positive interaction, and we can think that we can focus in an action. And I think that it's very interesting that when we talk about interculturalism, we move beyond diversity because ethnicity or nationality or this kind of more typical cultural differences. This is a problem that we have with the name, but at the end, the interculturalism approach is trying to focus on all diverse population. That means that when we think an action, we need to think not only if people from foreign origin is going to come here, but also if people from different ages are going to feel the same level of comfortability in the same project, and try to adapt everything in order to promote this kind of difference interactions. So when you think
sexual diversity, there's all kinds of diversity.
Yeah, try to check if it's working, not with on one. We know that there is no one diversity, that we are intersectional and we have a lot of them, but just try to check if it works with another one in order to see if the idea that you have, it's going to pass.
So they can check to see if there's like a culturalist bias in the project itself, because there are a lot of people that don't see cultural identity as the most important part of their identity. So that's important. Okay, so let's take a break. Danny, I like your suggestion to take 20 minutes. I think that's very European of you, very Southern European of you to suggest that we take a break. If you want, we can take a nap, a little siesta or something. And no? Okay. 20 minutes.
Stereotypes, Bob. Yeah.
I have no stereotypes. I have no stereotypes.
I drink 2 beers on the break. I have 2 beers, I'm gonna wear a Mexican hat and dancing here.
I have no stereotypes about Spanish people. Believe me, nothing, nothing. So 20 minutes. That brings us to about 2:25, and we'll come back and you can, as Anthony says, you can start preparing your ideas. You can maybe raise your hand in the chat or put the idea in the chat, and we'll put it out there. Maybe we could also, if the students are kind of like people who work for cities, maybe maybe the three of us could be kind of like elected officials. We could be like,
we're the ones that are going to approve the budget.
Yeah, that's right.
So if the idea doesn't like us, we are not going to pay for that. So it's
okay. Okay.
We are mayors who the guys just meet 30 seconds in the bar and they need to tell the story, and need for money.
Okay, so that's good. So we'll break now and come back in about 20 minutes. Everybody okay with that?